I have a question about regime change. Can we roll that, please, John?
So is regime change part of the effort here?
Could certainly be the result because the Iran regime is very weak. I think it's basically left with two things. It's plans to have atomic bombs and ballistic missiles. That's basically what Iran has. They certainly don't have the people. 80% of the people would throw these theological thugs out. I mean, they murder them, they oppress them for 46 years. They've yearned for freedom. I mean, they shoot women because their hair is uncovered. They shoot students. They just suck the oxygen from this brave and gifted people, the Iranian people. And you know, the Persian people and the Jewish people have had an ancient friendship, goes back to the times of Cyrus the Great. It could happen again. But again, the decision to act, to rise up at this time is the decision of the Iranian people. We decided to act because we saw enough uranium, enriched uranium, for 9 bombs. And all they had to do was weaponize them.
So, he's steadfast there that regime change is not the reason for this strike, that it's about the uranium enrichment, but mentioning at the beginning of the answer that there's lots of reasons why Iranians would want a regime change. What did you make of that answer?
Well, if you just look at the Israeli target list, which now has gone far, far beyond anything associated with nuclear facilities, or even beyond just military targets in general, we've had hundreds of civilian casualties reported so far. Yes, I think stirring things up politically has been inside Iran is another Israeli objective. Now, as to exactly what the Netanyahu government would like to see coming out of that, well, that's a different question. Um, my guess
Mhm.
is that they would be satisfied with something kind of like where Libya is now, where ever since Gaddafi was overthrown, it's been a chaotic mess, um, with not even a single stable government to this day having taken root. Uh, I
Serious.
doubt very much, and I remember seeing one statement by an Israeli official in a moment of candor about this some years ago. I think the last thing that Netanyahu would want is the emergence in Iran of a stable, moderate democracy with friendly relations with the United States. It doesn't want that at all because that would mean overthrowing what has been a centerpiece of Israeli foreign policy, and that's the whole theme of Iran being a bête noire that is responsible, in Bennett's terms, for 70% of all the ills in the Middle East, and has this great distracting power. So we're not paying so much attention to what's going on in a place like Gaza. Uh, and of course, with the tremendous special relationship that Israel enjoys with the United States, Netanyahu has no desire to see friendly relations between Iran and the United States.
Well, the hope that people always have, and I understand that there's very good reason to be skeptical of this, given how regime change has gone in many Middle Eastern countries over the past couple decades. But the hope is that a somewhat liberal, stable democracy would emerge in the wake of the theocracy, the oppressive theocracy that's currently running Iran. And I guess, like, the reason people have hope in Iran is that there have been some indications that there's a desire for that among the young people. There have been these uprisings, both in during the Green Revolution and then also during just recently. There's been instability within the regime, and Iran, actually, unlike many of these other countries, was once upon a time kind of one of those liberal democracies. Um, is it is there a case that Iran actually is different, and maybe there is hope that there could be something like a regime that Israel and the US and Europe could be comfortable with there?
Well, I think let's stick with the immediate issue, which is, what is the effect of the war that's going on now and how this relates to regime change? There's no question there's a lot of discontent with the regime in Iran. There's been a lot of economic mismanagement, which, in addition to the sanctions, that the U.S. has imposed has caused a lot of suffering, among the population. No doubt about that. But I think we've seen, and the opposition voices I've seen reporting over the last several days from inside Iran, the main theme that emerges is that those opposition voices have been making a clear distinction between the regime and the Iranian nation. And we've had a lot of the usual rallying around the flag effect, in which people who are very unhappy about the regime and the economic and other situations that are involved in Iran. But they say, right now our nation is under attack, and we're all Iranians. Um,
Ugh.
so to suggest that the war is moving politics in Iran in a direction that you mentioned, I think is simply we're not seeing it. So we're not seeing it, number one, because of that rally around the flag effect. But secondly, if, and this might be the case, even after some dust from the current combat has settled, if we were to see enough of a political change in Iran in the short term, where we could start talking about regime change, I think it's at least as likely that it would be change in the direction of a harder line, more intractable sort that neither we nor anybody else in the Western world would be at all comfortable with. I would think the most likely alternative possibility would be some, military type dictatorship, perhaps led by some of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officers who have moved up as Israel has killed some of their previous superiors, and would be arguing that the previous governments, including perhaps the supreme leader himself, Khamenei, but the likes of the current president Pezeshkian, have been too soft, and uh, and this particularly gets to the nuclear weapons issue. I think some of
Mm.
those hardliners, their voices are being strengthened, the ones who are arguing that Iran should try to build a nuclear deterrent, because this kind of attack that's going on shows that we need more of a deterrent than we have now. Firing a few missiles, conventional missiles at Israel, isn't going to be enough of a deterrent. So, yeah, we might have some political change, but I don't think it's something that you and I in the West are going to be happy with if it does occur.
How how does that sort of positive regime change typically happen? Clearly, happening in the wake of a devastating war has not been there's not a strong track record of that, at least in recent history. But I just hate to be fatalistic about the idea that there's this latent desire for a more liberal government in Iran, yet they're stuck under this theocratic dictatorship. How would an actual, like, positive, sustainable regime change happen in a place like Iran?
Well, usually it happens, without the foreign instigation. It happens when you've had, with the passage of time, uh, the effect of resentment of whoever is the incumbent, building to such a point that the people themselves are able to take things into their own hands, and perhaps there's just enough rot and fatigue inside the regime itself, that change becomes possible. I'm thinking of things like movements from military regimes to democracies in Latin America countries in the 1980s,
Right.
that's 80s and 90s, that sort of thing. Uh, but as soon as you get the outsiders involved, then not only do you get this rally around the flag fact, but you also are are discrediting some of the same people that you would most like to support, because they become associated with foreign intervention. And, in addition to the miserable record that the US has had in trying to instigate or support regime change in the Middle East, which certainly includes Iraq starting in 2003, and Libya when Gaddafi was overthrown. I mean, we can add Iran itself, with the US instigated coup in 1953, overthrowing a sort of leftist, and so we didn't like him, a guy named Mossadegh, but popularly elected prime minister. That left Iran in the hands of a monarch, Shah Reza Pahlavi, who ultimately turned out to have a rule that was weak as well as harsh, and that led directly to the Iranian Revolution of 1979, which produced the Islamic Republic that we have today. So there are multiple ways in which foreign interference in trying to instigate regime change can backfire, even if the backfiring may take several decades.
That was a clip from Just Asking Questions. You can watch another one here, the full episode here, and subscribe right down here.